Ever catch yourself doing something and it's like, wait, where did that come from? Like, why am I keeping this chipped mug?
Oh, tell me about it. I swear I have things in my closet from like 3 moves ago.
Right. And today's deep dive is all about that kind of thing, but on a whole other level. We're digging into Break the Cycle, this book on intergenerational trauma by Dr. Mariel Bouquet. One of you listeners sent this in, so thanks for that.
This one's a doozy. Really makes you think about the legacy we inherit from our families, you know?
Absolutely. And Dr. Bouquet starts off strong, right out the gate, with this whole thing about her grandmother's mug.
Oh, yeah. That was powerful. This simple object, right, becomes the symbol of how, like, scarcity mindsets get passed down.
For real. It made me think about, like, my parents and their waste not, want not thing. But Dr. Bouquet takes it a step further, right? It's not just about the stuff. It's that underlying feeling.
Totally. It's like that guilt you feel about throwing things away, even if you know you don't need them. It's almost like you're betraying your family's struggles or something.
Yes. It's that feeling of, what would grandma think?
And honestly, it's deeper than just guilt, isn't it? Dr. Bouquet talks about it as almost an act of loyalty, a way to honor our ancestors' sacrifices.
Right. Like by holding on to these objects, we're somehow keeping their memory alive.
Exactly. But the thing is, and this is where it gets really interesting, we often don't realize the impact those inherited patterns have on us, like on our own well-being.
And that's where it goes beyond just psychology, right? The idea of body memory blew my mind. Like, how literal are we talking here?
Right. When I first read that, I was like, okay, is this a metaphor? But Dr. Bouquet gets into the science of it, and it's actually incredible. Have you heard of epigenetics?
Vaguely. I think I saw something on a nature documentary once, but go on.
Okay, so basically it's like this. Imagine your genes are the blueprint, right? But your experiences, like your environment and the things you go through, they can actually change how those genes are expressed. And those changes, they can be passed down to future generations.
Hold up. So you're saying that something that happened to my grandmother, like way back when, could actually be affecting me today, even if I never even met her?
That's the gist, yeah. It's like our ancestors are literally living in our cells.
Whoa, okay, that is both fascinating and kind of freaky.
Right, like talk about skeletons in the closet. We're talking about emotions woven into our DNA. And this isn't just some abstract concept. Dr. Bouquet mentions a client who felt this deep, overwhelming sorrow, and she described it as being present in every single cell of her body. And it turned out this sorrow was directly connected to her family history, to events that she hadn't even experienced personally.
Okay, no, that's just wild. But it also kind of validates that feeling you get sometimes, like, deep down knowing that you're carrying something heavy that's not even yours to carry.
Totally. And the crazy part is we might not even realize it's happening. It's like this invisible script that's been passed down, influencing our reactions, our relationships, everything.
So how do we break free from a script we don't even know we're reading from?
That is the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And thankfully, Dr. Bouquet doesn't just leave us hanging.
So last time we were talking about how trauma can literally be passed down through generations.
Yeah.
Heavy stuff.
Mm-mm.
But thankfully, Dr. Bouquet gives us some tools to actually deal with it, right?
Totally. And this is where the book gets really practical, especially when it comes to, being a parent.
Oh, for sure. Because who hasn't looked at their kid mid-tantrum and thought, oh no, am I passing down the crazy?
Uh-huh, right. It's like, how do we break these cycles that we didn't even choose in the first place?
Exactly. And I think Dr. Bouquet really nails it when she says that it starts with us, our own healing, our own self-awareness. That's the foundation for raising emotionally healthy kids.
It's like that whole put your own oxygen mask on first thing, right? You can't help anyone else if you're gasping for air yourself.
Totally. But that's also kind of terrifying, right? Like, what if my baggage is creating blind spots in my parenting? What if I'm passing down stuff I don't even realize is harmful?
Oh, I feel that. It's like, am I accidentally messing up my kids? But honestly, that's where awareness comes in, right? Like, even just acknowledging those blind spots is huge E.
Right. It's like shining a light on those shadowy corners of our subconscious.
Exactly. And Dr. Bouquet does a great job of highlighting some of those potential blind spots. Like, one example she gives is, if you grew up in a home where big emotions weren't really okay, you might struggle to help your kids process their own big feelings.
Oh, 100%. Like, you end up either shutting down their feelings or freaking out right along with them.
Yeah, because it's triggering those unresolved things from our own past. But when we're aware of it, we can actually choose a different path.
Okay, I like that. It's about making conscious choices instead of just reacting from that old programming.
Yes. And she talks about mirroring as a really powerful tool for this.
Mirroring. Like, making funny faces at the dinner table.
Haha, not exactly. Though that's good for a laugh. It's more about reflecting back to your child that their emotions are valid, that you see them, you hear them.
Oh, okay. So, like, if my kid is having a meltdown because, their goldfish crackers spilled on the floor.
Tragedy.
The worst. So instead of being all, get over it, they're just crackers, they'd be like, wow, you seem really upset about those crackers. It's okay to feel sad.
Exactly. You're validating their experience without judgment. And that teaches them that their emotions are safe to express, which is so important.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And Dr. Buquet talks about creating a psychologically safe environment at home too, right?
Yes. And it sounds kind of formal, but it's really about creating a space where kids feel seen, loved, and accepted for exactly who they are. Quirks, meltdowns, and all.
So it's like, I can have a meltdown about my coffee being cold, but I also need to show my kids that it's okay for them to be upset, and we can figure things out together.
Exactly. It's about authenticity over perfection. Because let's be real, life with kids is messy, and we're not always going to get it right.
Tell me about it. So what happens when we're like running on fumes and those old triggers rear their ugly heads? So we've talked about how trauma echoes through generations and even how to parent from a more conscious place, but it can feel overwhelming, right? Like, how do we actually go from just surviving these patterns to really thriving?
Right. It's heavy stuff. But that's where the last part of this book really shines, I think. It reminds us that we are not defined by our traumas. Like, we're so much more than that.
Thank goodness for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, okay, trauma might be a chapter in our story, but it's not the whole book,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And those tough experiences, they can even be opportunities for growth. Dr. Buquet talks about this amazing thing we all have, this capacity for resilience.
Resilience, I hear that word a lot, but what's it really mean in this context? Like, in terms of intergenerational trauma?
Well, it's not just about being tough, though that's part of it, for sure. Dr. Buquet sees resilience as a kind of transformation. It's finding purpose because of those challenges, not in spite of them.
Oh, I like that. It's like those cracks in our foundation, those messed up family dynamics. Maybe that's where the light shines through.
Such a good way to put it. It makes me think of that Japanese art, kintsugi, where they repair broken pottery with gold. The imperfections actually become part of the beauty.
Oh, wow. I love that analogy. So it's not about pretending everything's perfect. It's about embracing those imperfections.
Yeah.
They make us who we are.
Exactly. And Dr. Buquet offers some really practical ways to build that resilience too. Like, she talks a lot about having a strong support system, people in your corner,
Right. Having people who get it, who've been there too. That's huge.
Absolutely. And I don't just mean therapists either, though therapy's great, obviously. But it's also those everyday moments of connection, friends, family, anyone who can just hold space for us to laugh and cry with,
Building our own chosen family. Love that. And of course, self-care comes up, but not in that cliche bubble bath kind of way.
Right. It's deeper than that. It's about actually listening to what our mind and body need, what brings us joy, and then, here's the kicker, giving ourselves permission to do those things.
So maybe it is a walk in nature, or maybe it's blasting music and dancing around your living room, whatever fills your cup, right?
Exactly. And sometimes the best self-care is just resting, saying no without the guilt trip. We can't pour from an empty cup, right?
So true. It reminds me of what Dr. Buquet says about tapping into our own inner wisdom.
Yes, that connection to our intergenerational higher self, that part of us that holds the wisdom of everyone who came before us, their strength, their lessons.
I love that. Like, we didn't just inherit their, tendency to stress bake. We also inherited their resilience.
Exactly. And there are ways to tap into that, she says. Journaling, meditating, connecting with nature. There's even an exercise where you imagine having a dialogue with your wiser self, like writing a letter to your future self or even your ancestors asking for guidance.
Oh, wow. That's powerful. I might try that. It's a good reminder that we're not alone in this.
Not at all. We have this whole lineage rooting for us, even when it doesn't feel like it. And that leads to this bigger idea of creating a legacy of healing.
So it's not just about us, right? It's about how our healing impacts future generations.
It is. But we don't have to be perfect. Dr. Buquet reminds us that even the smallest steps matter. Like, every little bit of healing creates a ripple effect.
Love that image. Even a tiny pebble can create ripples that travel far and wide.
Exactly. And it starts with choosing to show up differently for ourselves and the people around us.
Choosing love over fear, connection over isolation, being real, not perfect.
Yes. And remembering that healing is a journey, not a destination. It's going to be messy sometimes, but we don't have to do it alone.
And that's the best part, right? We are worthy of love, of healing, of belonging, and by breaking those cycles, we give others permission to do the same.
Absolutely. Dr. Bouquet leaves us with a really thought-provoking question, too. What leaves are you ready to let go of? What's holding you back from stepping into your power?
Ooh, that's a good one. Lots to think about. We'll leave you with that question, listeners. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep seeking, keep healing, and keep breaking those cycles.